You know that there are rules of decorum in the California Legislature? Yep, both the Assembly and Senate, like other legislative bodies around the country, utilize a number of rules as well as their customs and practices for the purpose of ensuring that legislative deliberations and debate operate in a civil and orderly way. There are individual House rules, the Senate rules, and the Assembly rules, as well as Mason's Manual of Legislative Procedure that provide general guidance and some very specific guidance to us. Let's cover the Senate rules, Assembly rules, and then Mason's Manual. Under the Senate rules, Senate Rule 21.5 subdivision J provides the chair shall direct the order of presentation of the arguments for and against matters for consideration by the committee, and shall permit questions to be asked by members of the committee in an orderly fashion and in keeping with proper decorum. Senate Rule 35A provides when a senator desires to address the senator shall rise at the senator's desk, address the presiding officer, and when recognized, proceed to speak through the public address system. When speaking, the senator shall confine the senator's remarks to the question before the House. A senator who has not been recognized by the presiding officer shall not address the body. Subdivision B of Senate Rule 35 states, a senator may not speak more than twice in any one debate on the same day and at the same stage of the bill without leave. Senators who have once spoken are not again entitled to the floor except for explanation, so long as any senator who has not spoken desires to speak. During the 5 days prior to the deadline for each House to pass bills introduced in that House and the 5 days prior to the last day for each House to pass bills, limits may be adopted to expedite the completion of the Senate's business by limiting the number of speakers per measure, amendment, or debatable motion and the time allotted to each speaker, as long as these limits are applied equally to speakers in support and in opposition. Subdivision C says, when two or more senators arise at the same time to address the Senate, the presiding officer shall designate the senator who is entitled to the floor. Subdivision D states, a senator may not be interrupted when speaking, and no question may be asked of the senator except through the presiding officer. Finally, subdivision E of Senate Rule 35 states, the author or floor manager of a bill, motion, or resolution shall have the privilege of closing the debate and may elect to answer questions raised in the debate during the author's or floor manager's closing. Finally, there's Senate Rule 36 that provides, when a senator is called to order, the senator shall sit down until the presiding officer has determined whether or not the senator is in order. Every question of order shall be decided by the presiding officer, subject to an appeal to the Senate by any senator. If a senator is called to order for words spoken, the objectionable language shall immediately be taken down in writing by the Secretary of the Senate. Now let's turn to the Assembly rules. Assembly Rule 108 provides, when a member desires to address the Assembly member shall rise from the member's seat and respectfully address the presiding officer as Mr. Speaker or Madam Speaker. Upon being recognized, the member may speak, combining his or her remarks to the question under consideration. When two or more members rise at the same time, the speaker shall designate the member who is entitled to the floor. It goes on to state that a member may not more than once during the consideration of any one question on the same day and at the same stage of proceeding, except that the author of a bill or resolution or the mover of a question has the right to open and to close the debate. A member may not be allowed to speak more than 5 minutes to open and 5 minutes to close the debate on any question, including amendments. And no member other than the author or the mover of the question may be allowed to speak more than 5 minutes. A member may not yield to any other member the time for which the member is entitled to speak on any matter. And then secondly, there's Assembly Rule 108.1. It's actually titled Rules of Decorum. And it provides that in accordance with Rule 10, Assembly Rule 10, members of the Assembly shall conduct themselves in accordance with the rules of decorum specified in sections 120 to 126 of Mason's Manual of Legislative Procedure. In addition, Assembly Rule 108.1 specifies that the Committee on Rules may adopt additional rules of decorum by a majority vote. So, for the Assembly rules, we need to turn to Mason's Manual. And Chapter 14 of Mason's Manual is titled Decorum in Debate, and it contains sections 120 to 127, which are referenced in Assembly Rule 108.1. Section 120 is titled Equality of Members in Debate, and it provides that every legislator has the same right as any other legislator to present questions for consideration of the House and has the same right to be heard. Section 121 of Mason's Manual is titled Breaches of the Order of the House. And this section provides that legislators should not resort to persistent irrelevance or to persistent repetition. In addition, during debate, no one should disturb another in his or her speech, and the consequences of a measure may be denounced in strong terms, but to attack the motives of those who propose or advocate it is not in order. Section 122 is titled Procedure under Call to Order, and it provides that when called to order by the presiding officer, the legislator must sit down until the question of order is decided. A legislator who is ruled to be out of order loses the floor, and another legislator may be recognized by the presiding officer. Section 123 is titled Use of Disorderly Words in Debate, and this section of Mason's Manual provides that no person may use indecent language with reference to the body, the legislative body, or the members of that legislative body. Then there's section 124, and it's titled Personalities Not Permitted in Debate. And this section provides that during debate, a legislator must confine his or her remarks to the question before the House and avoid any personalities. Specifically, it states that a member, in referring to another member, should, as much as possible, avoid using his or her name, rather identifying him or her by the district represented, the seat, or the member who last spoke, or by describing the member in some other manner. Section 125 is titled Personal Disputes Between Members, and this section provides that whenever there has been a dispute or an assault between members, the legislative body may require the members to settle their differences and agree not to prosecute the disagreement any further. And finally, Mason's Manual, section 126, that's titled Complaints Against the Presiding Officer. It provides that the presiding officer is subject to the same rules regarding disorderly words as members are. A complaint regarding the conduct of the presiding officer is to be presented directly for action by the House.